Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Energy News Beat podcast. My name's Stu Turley, President and CEO of the Sandstone Group. And we've got a really fun project and podcast today. We're talking to Brian Darty. And I mean, this is really fun. We've been having a chit chat ahead of time, and we've got so much synergy here besides our barbers. Welcome, Brian. And I mean, we are going to have a blast talking about security, blockchain, and energy.
I look forward to it, Stuart, and thank you for having me on the show.
Oh, well, Brian, we were just talking here about how we talk about guys dating our daughters. And also you have a lot of the same things. They got to do projects with you and they got to do that. What prompted you to go through that kind of a process?
I think just having daughters in general. I mean, I was a young man at one point and, I've matured since then. So making sure, to keep everybody on the straight and narrow.
But, that's probably followed you over to your work life, hasn't it?
It has. Like my father really spent a great deal of his time making sure that I appreciated what a good work ethic was.
Right.
And, it did teach me and carry over, and really, outwardly thinking of the quality of work that you provide, that proof of work, really, right? And that's one of the things that brought me to blockchain was this concept of proof of work, where you're showing and proving that you're investing in the time, the energy, the resources into improving something, and then you have something there to show for it.
The cool thing is, you were also saying as we were chit-chatting early on, and that is that blockchain is the new oil. And I think that's pretty darn cool. I've not heard that way, but like ESG, half the world can't even spell ESG. They have no idea what it is, but there is no ESG without accountability. And blockchain does a great job with accountability throughout the whole process. We were talking about your 19 different hats that you have. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if you had a hat stand behind you with about 30 hats. But let's go through some of your first hats here, Brian, because being the public policy director in subject matter, tell us about your first one there.
Sure. So I work with the Bitcoin Association, which is a educative nonprofit organization that's based in Zug, Switzerland. It's a global organization, and one of our biggest missions is really to provide education on proof of work blockchain and how blockchain can be used for utility, not just trading tokens or creating NFTs. And my work there has kind of grown over the last year and a half to where I am the global public policy director. I work with directly and indirectly 30 different countries, including the US, Canada, the EU, and the UK. And I've spent a great deal of time this year working with, congressional staffers and Senate to really provide a basic understanding of of blockchain technologies in general. You'd be surprised. Most of everyone really kind of takes their understanding of this technology from the media, right? And if the media is so focused on the speculation or this crypto casino, then they're not really talking about the utility. And so that transcends into our government, where lawmakers are looking at these types of issues, whether it's the energy consumption of, say, Bitcoin BTC or some other type of blockchain, and they want to make holistic decisions. But the problem is, and what I think is interesting about this industry specifically, is that there's so misunderstanding, right? There's probably 99.8% of the people that really speak about the utility or even just the application or technology of blockchain have a very short limited understanding of really what the technology can do. And I'll give you just a prime example. The token that everybody gets all excited about because the price might go up or go down. Well, that should be based on, the value should be based on utility, right? And when we're looking at comparing different type of blockchains like BTC, which is I think at $30,000 today. Well, when
Right.
you start kicking the tires, well, what does it do? Well, you can't use data on it, right? Like it's really just a ledger where you and I can trade a token.
Right.
And there's no real utility that really comes from that. I know a lot of people like to make the argument of it's a store of value. However, we've seen that value fluctuate from $68,000 to $3,000. So, but
Yep.
when you're really talking about data is the new oil, right?
Yep.
And blockchain is this new oil pump, really.
Right.
It's because we have things like ESG, where COP26 regulations or the SEC has come out and they've made these, demands upon large entities of being,
Right.
more honest and transparent about their own, say, greenwashing statements or non-greenwashing statements. And so they're in a challenge in the sense of legacy technology does not provide the solution for them to
Right.
authenticate these values. And that's where blockchain really, supplies, a resilient infrastructure for this next. I like to say we go from the big data era, right?
Right.
Where we've had smart devices, few
Right.
IoT things, but we're now into this extreme data era
Right.
where we have a proliferation of IoT devices and smart devices. We have satellites,
Right.
we have, sensors and drones, and all of this data can be utilized for
Right.
productive things. And quickly, I'll give you an example of, we're talking about logistics and the problem with manufacturing and globalization and what that has led to at the stores where,
Right.
you might not be able to access some of those things that you wanted to purchase before. Well,
Right.
that's because a lot of the things are created outside of the US. But imagine if if we didn't have to take things off ships, right? Not saying we can't fix that problem, but we created things here. And say we just looked at, the energy sector. Well, when you're looking at carbon sequestration of technologies are available, there's nothing better than hemp, right? It definitely sequesters 100 times more carbon than say an actual tree lot. And then on top of that, not only are you able to extract this carbon, but you're also able to create these incredible materials from hempcretes, right, that are sustainable, that it's cheaper than wood. A lot of builders now are looking at these type of products, but you have medicines and food and makeups and all the biofuels that can be done.
Right.
Well, now think about it as this value chain across all these different industries of just any industry.
Right.
Now you take say a hemp field that's growing in Virginia, you
Yep.
measure 22 different data points of using IoT sensors and drones. Now
Right.
you can actually have a value of the carbon that's sequestered. And now you can sell, say, an authenticated carbon credit to a company that's looking to displace that carbon that they're emitting, that the SEC and
See,
COP26 are looking to kind of get that.
I get excited because you just nailed actually accountability. You just nailed value. There's value to that as opposed to value to that coin that you just described.
That's the key, right?
Yeah.
And when you're looking at the value, it's not just the value of that immediate data for that company, because now you have this infrastructure that removes third parties. So now you and I can trust each other without having this honeypot of information, right? And this honeypot of information is exactly what cyber attackers are looking to go to, right? It's a one-stop shop. So now you've removed that, so you've improved everybody's security as well. So now you can remove these data silos and be more transparent along your value chain with the partners that you have within inside of it, right? So now I can track that fish from where the hatchery was. I can see exactly what the temperature of it was and the weight as it, was shipped over to the processing facility. Then I can see that fish go through the distributor, and then even through the trucking, and then down to the sushi restaurant who before he buys the fish can see that provenance of data
Right.
What was the fish when you caught it? When did you catch it? Did it sit on the side of the road for 4 hours, right? And then I can decide whether I want to accept
Right.
that fish and provide that quality to my consumers. But now all of that is trackable, and all of that data is worth money to these companies back and forth. So
Right.
now you're not only building a better product, you're building, a more resilient infrastructure, a faster, more real-time infrastructure,
Wow.
right? So now you can really start to use these type of IoT devices and sensors and drones to really facilitate truth. And when you get to blockchain or Bitcoin, which, I look at Bitcoin, the original protocol that was released, in 2009 as, something as the original blockchain, right? That's all we ever really needed. It was so misunderstood that still to this day, there's 1 megabyte blocks, right? 1 megabyte. Think about this. Every 10 minutes, there's 1 megabyte block worth of transactions on BTC.
Right.
That's not a lot of data. I mean, if you picked up your Apple iPhone and took a photo of us at, you're looking at 6 megabytes, right? So in today's world, that doesn't really do anything. Well, looking at the original protocol, Satoshi Nakamoto had previously said from day one that the Bitcoin network could scale beyond the likes of Visa. Well, what does he mean by that? Well, again, I think I gave you that reference of Bitcoin BTC at 30,000. It does 7 transactions per second.
Right.
Imagine if we were going to do global email, sending it back and forth, and we were all only able to send 7 transactions per second, right?
Right.
Like nobody would get anything done. We wouldn't get our
Right.
email. Visa does about 24,000 transactions per second on an average day, right? And this is just financial transactions.
Right.
On, in the holidays, they might do upwards of 70,000 transactions per second. Well, when you're really looking at this technology that I'm saying is going to be this new infrastructure, more secure for your data because of less honeypots, then how can we rely on something that can only do 7, or Ethereum, which does about 20 to 30 transactions per second?
Right.
It's $194 to add data to Ethereum, which is $194 per kilobyte. So, I mean, it doesn't really make economic sense. So we needed to go back and really scale the technology.
Yep.
And that's where, the Bitcoin Association, get back to your original question, that's where, we've been pushing this original protocol, and, we've gone back to improve the, the original protocol with more commercial grade node software that allows over 100,000 transactions per second today. But beyond just the throughput side of that, now
Right.
you're able to add data. And you can put data on chain because it's less than, a thousandth of a penny per kilobyte. So when you're looking at this data, well, what could that data be? Well, imagine a pharmaceutical company where, if you're coming out with this new product, this new medicine, you want to know where the ingredients were from, where they were sourced, the quality of those ingredients. You want to know about the testing, right? If it was required, for 4 months of testing, did they just put the testing data in the last day and do it all that day? Or are there data points, right, along the way that you can refer to on the blockchain as this, universal source of truth? So that way you have this accountability at the end of the day as the pharmaceutical company if something goes wrong, right? If the lettuce, if the lettuce my farm produces, or the medicine my pharmaceutical company produces has an issue, I have this ledger and this universal source of truth that I can go back in time. It's immutable. So that way I know that data doesn't change. And all I really have to do is I don't even have to put the data on chain. I can just put a hash of that data on chain and keep a hash of that data in the cloud, my cloud. And that way, 10 years from now, whether it's ESG legacy reporting data, whether it's pharmaceutical testing data, I can go back and compare those hashes and say, you know what, this has not changed, right? I can authenticate that data. And when it comes to, like, say, the ESG problem that we have now, that companies are like, how do I authenticate? How do I verify this data? Well, you've already using all of these network devices and smart stuff, right? So let's just, authenticate it and put it in real time. So that way you have this ledger of events that you can go out draw back from.
All right, Brian, we are having such a great conversation, and I'm in. I'm all in, because you get low. You cannot do $124 per transaction, because by the time you do that, the amount of power, blah, blah, blah. What you've just described and what we're seeing with Bitcoin is the government's now trying to get their hand into all of this. You also have and said that you're in there visiting with government folks and everything else. What are you seeing on the government front?
Yeah, so I work with everybody from, say, the Justice Department to, congressional staffers and congressmen and senators. And, it's interesting because over the last 5 months that I've been having, direct conversations,
Right.
they understand that there are two different things, right? There's cryptocurrency,
Right.
which is what everybody is looking at, and that's
Right.
what they kind of respond to. But again, there's this underlying technology called blockchain, and blockchain provides this automation, a timestamp server that's distributed. It provides all this utility. And, while we're kind of looking at just trading tokens, and, it's funny because most blockchain related, say, environmental or ESG related, projects are something like, I'm going to create a token on Ethereum and give 10% back to the Black Jaguar Foundation. Well, how does that displace carbon, right? Or how does that, promote, some type of, sustainability outside of what you could do with legacy technology? And
Right.
when you get to the energy conversation, and that's primarily what I'm discussing with them, because as we see right now in upstate New York, where they just,
Right.
the Senate has passed a ban on proof of work mining, a moratorium. Well, think about this. The data that they're utilizing is based of highly from the media or from research facilities like Cambridge University that have all this energy data on Bitcoin BTC. Well, that is just one protocol, right? That's one out of, say, 50, or say maybe 4 different real proof of work protocols, right, that are related in Bitcoin technology. There's Bitcoin BTC, there's Bitcoin BCH, there's Bitcoin BSV. BSV is the one that does 100,000 transactions per second. It shares all the way back to the same Genesis block. It's, it is Bitcoin, right? So there's a big misunderstanding when, say, politicians or researchers utilize BTC as the benchmark for energy consumption or utility. Because again, as I mentioned before, if you have BTC, which has 1 megabyte blocks every 10 minutes, you can only fit so many transactions in there, right? And so if the same amount of energy is required for one BSV block, which could be 8 gigabytes big or bigger, right? There's no limit, it's unbounded. Then you're looking at that energy consumption, that actual CO2 footprint compared to those two technologies, drastically different. And so for BTC, it's about 1,200 kilograms of CO2 per transaction. For BSV, it's far less than 2 kilograms of CO2 per transaction. Right now, so now explaining this to, say, somebody who only has a reference to, say, Cambridge University's BTC benchmarks, but they're making laws like a moratorium. Well, who does that harm? It actually harms New York State's economic, status, because the utility that I'm sharing with you, right? This, transparency, the accountability, just the security of our data is so, it's in the paper every day. There's a cyber breach, right? So some of the work I do with the Department of Defense through the CSIAC, is really just kind of providing the utility. And that's everything from sharing how blockchain can be used for, autonomous underwater vehicles that, may have some military capabilities. However, they also have civilian capabilities in the sense of they're mapping the seafloor or they're mapping a sandbar, right? So now this data that's provided to mariners comes about every 30 days, right? And so now you have real-time access to, for a public, private, military type of project that can actually
Right.
benefit regular fishermen out there. So, I mean, again, like the utility is huge. And so for a state like New York State to put a moratorium on Bitcoin, I'm happy that, you know, they're looking into it. They're looking to spend the next 2 years kind of diving into proof of work, but, you know, it may harm them in the sense of this utility provides today. The product I mentioned earlier, CertaHash, we just, you know, launched this product as far as an announcement with a collaboration of development with IBM. So
Right.
they're very interested in learning how to use a public permissionless, you know, blockchain rather than say a private permission blockchain like Hyperledger, because it has this type of accountability. Because if something's private and permissioned,
Right.
somebody else owns that data, right? It's not
Exactly.
your data, right? If it's public and permissionless, you're the one that owns your data. You take it wherever you want. It's just, and you can obfuscate that data. It's just allows you to have this universal source of truth. But, you know, when you
I'm going to ask Brian a really
sure.
good question. Do you lose any security with universal truth, as you say? If it's open and it's your data, is the security still there?
No, the security is actually only there, right? Because the way that the consensus mechanism works for proof of work is that,
Right.
you know, you have these miners that are authenticating, you know, data from the outside of the network, and they're
Right.
highly incentivized. If you go back to the original white paper, you know, honesty is mentioned 15, 17 times in the paper because it is a holistic system that incentivizes honesty. And for proof of work, having a public permissionless blockchain, you know, again, how many internets do we have today? We have one, right? We have one internet because that's our universal source of truth today. It's not
Right.
the truth that changes as much as possible.
Right.
You know, it depends on all sorts of stuff. But I look at blockchain as the next iteration of the block of the internet. I call it the metanet. Others call it the metanet. And, you know, that way you can actually have this universal source of truth and data ownership where people aren't being canceled.
Wow.
And I'll give you a prime example. There's social media websites that exist on BSV. You know, there's ones that very similar to Twitter, similar to Facebook, you know, you name Instagram. But the difference is this: when I'm adding my data of, say, a photo onto relica.world is the website, but it's like Instagram. When I'm
Right.
adding my photo on there, it might cost me a penny. But now I own that. It's in my wallet, right? And if people like or share or comment on that,
Right.
you know, their model is to where you get paid. They send you, you know, a micro transaction, 1 penny, 5 pennies, whatever, to where now you're actually making money from the data that you're putting on chain. Whether that's, and think about this from, say, a Facebook perspective. You're
Right.
putting data on their website all the time, right? You're bringing views to their website, the content that you create, whether it's a video, whether it's a photo, whether it's your post, you know, whatever it is. But they're turning around and you're selling you as the product because they're selling your data, right, to Cambridge Analytica or whomever. And then they're actually utilizing, you know, your content views to make sales for advertisements.
Right.
But you're not getting any of this money, and you're the one that's creating all this energy. Well, with blockchain, you can actually, you know, be compensated directly, right? So me, if I post this photo of us on Relica World today, somebody comes by and likes it, I might get a, you know, 1 or 2 pennies as a micro transaction. But what does that do? They might, you know, it prevents spam from somebody just spamming my comment box with products or something. You know, it allows me, if say Relica World just disappears tomorrow, I still own that data. It's still in my ledger. I can import that data into a different interface. So that stops people from being canceled, right? So we have this huge cancel culture where, you know, we can just turn somebody off. Why? Because it's a private permission database
Right.
where now if you have a public permissionless, everybody has an equal say. right? You don't have something to where I can turn you off. And think about it. There's tons of people on the internet and in the world that
Right.
we probably don't like now, but we're not going out and searching for them, right? Like, or whatever.
Right.
But that's everybody deserves to have a voice and access to information. And I
Right.
look at blockchain as this universal source of truth that will provide that information in the future. And you can attest to that and verify that data in so many different ways, right? I can
Yeah.
prove that you put a cat photo on 10 years ago. I don't know why I'd want to, but if I needed to authenticate that in a court, I could say, yeah, this is his cat. He posted it 10 years ago. Here's the timestamp. Here's in his
Right.
wallet.
Wow. I'm sitting here, you know what, I'm sitting here trying to absorb 90% of this conversation, and I'm following along, and I got all these questions. But one of the most important things, Brian, that I've just been watching is your eyes, your passion, and your excitement about what you're talking about. That to me is an industry thought leader. I'm sorry, you're enjoying your conversation and everything else. And I just appreciate that. I mean, it sounds kind of corny, but
No, honestly, this is something, this is not work. I highly enjoy being able to really provide this information. It's life-changing, right? If I came to you, 30 days into the internet, right? And I told you, hey, you could sell books and, ultimately become this huge company called Amazon or Google or Facebook or whatever.
right,
And, you took that information seriously. You said, let me look at this. And then you went out and built one of these businesses,
right,
Oracle or whatever. Now, I feel like that's a big change for me to be able to help people change the world in a better way, because these microtransactions, they're key. Because blockchain, if I've got Ethereum that's sitting in an Ethereum wallet, but because of the fees, are so volatile, at one point they were $70. And what do I do with my $35 of Ethereum? I can't use it because it costs too much to send. So
right,
it's really kind of useless, right? It's like a paper rock. And, when you think about the utility of, say, a third world country where they're living on $1 a month, $4 a month.
right,
Well, think about me posting a photo of the Ugandan sunset on Relica. And because I have a smartphone and
right,
people enjoy, this photo I took, now I'm getting directly compensated. Or if I'm, say, a YouTube version, and there one exists called streamanity.com,
right,
where I can upload a video, may cost me $1, may cost me 30 cents. But
right,
now every person that watches that video in real time, I could charge 10 cents. And if 100,000 people watch that video, even if, they watch the whole thing, I'm doing really well compared to what YouTube would pay me for,
oh
a
yeah,
million views, right? They're going to maybe give me $30 if I'm lucky. And that's where, you can also do this is, if I'm watching Netflix and I can't stand this movie, I've just paid, $7 to watch, whatever movie, and 8 minutes into it, it's horrific. Well, I don't get my $7 back, but if I'm using blockchain to facilitate streaming and microtransactions, and I only have to pay for the first 8 minutes of what I've watched because the
right.
movie stinks and I don't want to pay anymore. Well, think about that model. So this really changes everything as far as how business models can be facilitated with microtransactions.
I can see both sides of this. The consumers can win, but the movie folks would hate it because the Bruce Willis movie, Cosmic Sin, something like that, was a most horrific, horrible movie. And I wanted to kill it the moment I did. And I'm sorry that I even rented that stupid thing. No, I'd eject that movie right out in about 2.5 seconds. That
The
wasn't all that.
movies, they're going to love it, though. I'll tell you why. Because
Why is
think
that?
about it this way, and I do a lot of work with the entertainment industry lately, especially musicians, videographers,
Right,
advertisers. And when you really think about it, blockchain also facilitates smart contracts, meaning you and
oh,
I, right? You and I can create a
yep,
contract, a legally binding contract, and have it automated through blockchain. So
nice.
that means, whether you're an investor in the movie, whether
Right.
you're an actor, whether you're, holding sound equipment, that can all be facilitated in real time. So that helps mitigate a lot of future lawsuits, a lot of future audits, a lot of future legal work that's required, because now everybody's getting it in real time and it's in a public permissionless blockchain that they can facilitate, they know the truth. And so it really creates this efficiency on so many different levels, whether it's for a company to really go green because you're saving this much more money. I mean, put it this way, CertaHash is a cybersecurity tool. It's based on the NIST cybersecurity framework, right?
Right.
Just on the detection category. But if I told you the average time to detect a cyber breach on your network was 212 days, right?
Yeah.
That's just unacceptable. But
Right.
that's what it is. Do you know how much it costs after, just here in the United States, after 30 days of a network breach? You're
Right.
looking at the total cost, and this isn't even towards the company's reputation, of
Right.
around $9 million. Globally, past
I think
30
that's
days,
low.
it's
That's
4.87 million, right?
take the Colonial Pipeline.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, think about how many people that whacked. Just
Solar winds.
pipeline.
Look at solar winds, 18,000 direct customers, 10 different departments of our government, including every facet of our military was breached, right?
lot of
And
my-
they were on our network for a year and a half.
A lot of my energy companies were solar winds. They used it as we were bringing data from the fields in. That's a problem.
Well, now think about what CertaHash does. One of the very last things a cyber attacker will do before, raising holy hell, will be to cover their tracks, right? They're
Right.
going to obfuscate their IP address, wherever, the network access log. Well,
Right.
if you're just facilitating in real time, right, this
Right.
network access log, and now a change occurs because there's a hash break because he went back and changed to remove some data, you're detected instantly, right? So it's not about prevention, it's
Oh.
about detection at the earliest possible moment. So now when you're really looking at the situation, you can actually have a CISO who's informed nearly instantly that there's been a potential, network breach. And, that prevents 4.87 million globally after 30 days, 9 million in the US. Where can that money be applied to? Right now, you can start applying this money to do ESG, right? Where you're really promoting carbon sequestration, if that's your goal, right? Rather than creating greenwashing.
Brian, you just nailed the whole problem right there. And I don't want to go back to the Colonial, except a lot of folks understood they couldn't get any gasoline. They couldn't get anything out of that pipe. And the reason it kept taking so long is they kept going back and restoring their servers. And it was back there for so many months. They had to keep restoring and restoring until they finally found one that worked. And that was the problem. I mean, it was.
I've spent 20 years, in, enterprise hardware, software sales and consultation. And, cybersecurity was always the number one topic, and it was always the number one thing people wanted to spend money on. So I spent a great deal of time, like, really understanding, the issues there. And that's really what led me to blockchain initially, is I heard Dr. Craig Rice speak on information security. And this guy has a background as far as information security that's just uncomparable to anybody today. Right. And, it really opened, this idea of enterprise utility, of providing these type of solutions that solve the problem. Because for so much time, I was selling all this different cybersecurity hardware and software. But I mean, the problems are more prominent today, right? And they're more substantial when you're looking at Colonial or Solar Winds, when they were able to access the Microsoft source code and change it. Like, what's going on? There's problems here. So, when you sort of see this utility that can be applied, a mission critical log detection is about every 5 minutes that they actually look at your logs today. That's legacy technology. So every 5 minutes, they might look at your logs. That's mission critical. Most people can't afford that. And then when you're looking at the problem of the sense of cybersecurity breaches. Like I said, there's no shortage of them in the newspaper. Well, what does that mean for an enterprise? You probably need cyber insurance, right? Well, guess what? If you've gotten issues like Colonial, to where they've imprinted these type of time bombs into your all of your backups and everywhere, or even into your hardware itself, you have to take it out back and shoot it and buy new gear, right? And that's millions, if not billions of dollars for some companies, especially in the solar wind side. But now when you're looking at being able to detect it at that earliest possible moment, you move the needle so much more up front. And that's what blockchain provides first and foremost, is
Right.
this new resilient, redundant security model, because it provides a better confidentiality of your records, better
Right.
integrity of your records, and better availability of your records, because they're not just stuck in, say, an Amazon S3 server. And when that goes down, I can't use my Alexa, because you have this proof of work mining, apparatus that people are investing, hardware into it. It's redundant. And so if one miner goes down, you still have access to all of this data, right? And if, as far as an energy consumption side, think about it this way: one YouTube video, if it's got 5 million views, it strikes up 8 data centers when you Google it. How much energy does that use, right?
Wow. I hadn't even
You
thought of
know,
that.
I mean, you're talking 72 Olympic, pools of water for,
Right.
just to store and bring up access for one YouTube video. So when, working with the government, getting back to the original question, I'm working with them, it's really important to kind of delineate between, say, cryptocurrency and this token economy, crypto casino,
Right.
versus blockchain, because it is a matter of national economic security. It's a
Right.
matter of national energy security, and it's a matter of national information security. And when you look globally, whether it's China, whether it's Russia, whether it's, whomever,
Right.
you're starting to see where data as this new oil, right? This
Right.
very valuable thing is important to protect and important to be able to facilitate the trade of. And that's what blockchain
Wow.
really provides.
I'll tell you what, that just summarized everything that we talked about in this whole thing. And Brian, my head's exploded, but it's exploded because of great things. You are truly an industry expert, and I want to have you back. And better yet, I want to try to see if we couldn't put together some kind of forum, blockchain forum or something, to talk about blockchain and energy, because I think that this is such a great conversation. We got about 2 more minutes, but what's next for Brian? What are you doing next?
Yeah, so I've just really started a more global endeavor of my public policy outreach, to where, again, we're kind of bringing in Canada, the UK, and the EU to really put a global team to replicate what I've done here in the US, and really work with those policymakers, because it's key. It's
Right.
important for all of us to kind of work off of, this technology standards for, the next era of what we're, this extreme data era that we're already in. So I'm
Oh,
going to
yeah.
keep pushing away on that aspect. I'm going to keep pushing away on, the cybersecurity aspect and information security of blockchain,
Yeah.
and then just really kind of continue promote a lot of different vendor solutions that are plug and play and available today to almost any business through Smart Ledger. So I'm like really excited about what the rest of this year has to offer, and I'd love to discuss and forum anytime. This is a subject I just enjoy talking about. So
I am so thrilled for your time. And again, I look forward to visiting with you again. I'm choked up. I think I swallowed a bug, but I'm really choked up because this was really fun. But again, thank you very much, and we will talk soon.
all right, thank you, Stu. I really appreciate it. Take care.